Are we going to war? Because it feels like war vibes right now, right? It's like a soft launch of a war in the Middle East. In case you haven't been following the news, there's been a huge naval buildup of forces near and around Iran. And I think there are several factors that indicate that the president might push the button for war soon. Now, the center to this whole storm that everything else is revolving around at the moment is the US-Iran nuclear talks. Trump has been trying to strike a nuclear deal with Iran since he took office last year, using some unique methods to do that. Bombing them. He bombed them really hard. But it seems as if the talks are back on at the moment. But they might not be going so well. There might not be a lot of common agreement, with both sides indicating they are ready for full-out war in recent days. Now, this is a current map of naval firepower being moved to the Middle East, and you can see it's a pretty big buildup. Now, in case you haven't seen the video on my main channel talking about this, there's been a bit of back and forth within the Trump administration with different factions vying for control. One side saying that they want a nuclear deal with Iran, namely Trump is pretty big in this corner right now, but there are also other aspects of the administration, people like Marco Rubio, who are advocating regime change. You can go watch that video right up here. Now, why would these people be advocating for regime change? Why now? There's an argument that the regime in Iran right now, the theocracy, is at its weakest point in a very long time, possibly ever. This is due to a few different factors. I think the first and biggest was the war in Gaza over the last several years led to Israeli forces taking out a lot of Hezbollah and other satellite agents of the Iranian regime. This was followed up, as I mentioned earlier, by a 12-day bombing campaign last year between Israeli forces and US forces that bombed tons of nuclear sites within the country. And just this last January, there were mass protests across the country against the current regime that led to a brutal crackdown in protests. The numbers are fuzzy, but estimates are in the thousands for protesters killed during this crackdown. So if you ever wanted regime change, now is probably a good time to do it. You may even remember that Trump issued a threat during these protests that if the Iranian regime killed any protesters, that the US was locked and ready to go. Now, it's reported that Trump delayed a decision to actually strike Iran after reports came out of them killing protesters because military assets were not already in the region for a proper strike, the same way that they were during the last strikes last year. And that's around when the nuclear talks started up again. You can kind of see how this is all piecing together, right? Israel has been quite vocal on how they're preparing for a possible war. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was quoted saying, quote, "We are prepared for any scenario," and that if Iran attacked Israel first, maybe due to some US response, quote, "they will experience a response they cannot even imagine." Now, you may remember after the attacks on nuclear facilities last year, estimates came in from various sources saying that there was still a decent amount of infrastructure for Iran to build a nuclear weapon. Any sort of wider scale conflict would have the primary goal of wiping out these facilities. Now, in case you didn't think that this was a big enough basket of incentives for the US to start war in Iran, there's also the oil factor. As you can see here, oil prices are relatively low, with future forecasts predicting it to go even lower soon. Any sort of conflict in Iran would push oil prices up higher. But if you're starting from a base per barrel that is this low already, it gives you more room to take this kind of action without pressure from domestic oil producers. I think there's also an argument that the redeployment of the Venezuelan oil reserves will, over the next couple years, push oil prices lower. So any sort of prolonged spike in oil prices over the next 2 or 3 years might be subdued by what happens in Venezuela. Now, I need to note that this is speculation on my part, but I think it's important for you to have all these factors to piece together for yourself to see what's going to happen. Now, whether or not active conflict starts in Iran, I think the confluence of all these factors shows that something is going to happen in the next couple of weeks here. Hopefully something less violent, like a new nuclear treaty, right? But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. God, that's the downside to these daily videos. This could age horribly. But hey, at the end of the day, I'm trying to build you a toolbox of useful information to have as you go about your life every day. And if you find that interesting, if you want to be a part of the channel and get that every single day, I would love for you to join today. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.